Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Comedian Craig Ferguson performs live at the Hollywood Casino at Charlestown Races in West Virginia on Saturday night. He joined me to preview his stand-up show and reflect on his time hosting The Late Late Show on CBS.
Hello.
Hey, Craig Ferguson. Hey, thanks so much for joining us on WTOP in Washington, D.C.
Well, it's very nice to be on WTOP in Washington, D.C.
We should tell everybody we're talking because you are coming to, well, not DC, but pretty close, just over the border of Virginia, in West Virginia at the Hollywood Casino at Charlestown Races. Always get good acts in there. And you're the latest one. You're going to be coming this Saturday, November 11th at 8 p.m. And we're calling it the Fancy Rascal Tour. What's in the name? Why are you a fancy rascal?
Well, I feel like I actually named it after my Jack Russell dog that I was talking to someone at the time. They said, what do you want to call the tour? And I just said, Fancy Rascal. The good thing about what you have to do when you're choosing the name for a tour is choose something that's not going to annoy anybody. And I think Fancy Rascals, I can't imagine anyone being annoyed at that for some reason. But maybe, I don't know, we'll find out.
No, it makes you smile. Wait, so just to follow up, are you saying that your Jack Russell Terrier is named Rascal, or he just reminds you of a rascal?
He just reminds me of a rascal. But, that being said, I don't want to elevate anyone's expectations. The dog will not be on stage. The dog will not be on stage.
That's all right. Craig Ferguson is hilarious enough on your own, my friend.
Thank you.
Well, I don't want to, spoil any of your punchlines if people are coming to the show, but we know there's no dog. But what sort of, I don't know, what general topics or areas do we go into? Do we do any DC political stuff since you're close to DC, or is it more stuff about your personal life, your own life?
No, definitely no. I made a decision about 6 or 7 years ago, that I would no longer do any politics at all on stage. I got this idea. I don't know how you feel about it. I mean, probably not in DC, but I'm now even tired of listening to people I agree with. I'm like, yeah, all right, whatever. And I think that what I wanted to do was create a show which was like, it's 90 minutes long. It's anecdotal and it's personal, or it's universal in its themes. It's love, sex, death, the weather, family, whatever, food. But what it is not, it doesn't have any politics to it. So all the stuff that you're angry about, when you get into the show, it'll all still be there 90 minutes later when you get out. But for 90 minutes, I'm not going to talk about it, and neither are you. And it's about taking a break, I think.
What'd you say? Love, sex, death, weather, and food. There you go. That's the gamut. That's life. I love it.
Pretty much, I think.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, hey, whenever I have someone, famous like yourself on, I always love to at least remind our listeners a bit of your origin story. I know you were born in the 60s in Glasgow, Scotland. Who were your like comedy idols growing up? Were there comedians? I guess back then would have been, more stand-up records or albums or even like TV sitcoms. You know what I mean? Like who were your comedy idols?
Well, for me, the main one, the absolute one was Billy Connolly. Billy Connolly's a Scottish comedian. Billy's about 20 years older than me, and he was making albums, when I was a teenager. So I would listen to his albums, and they were the naughty albums. They were kind of like the Red Fox albums, the albums you had to be quiet about and sneaky about because he said rude words and stuff. So you had to hide them from your parents, only to find out later on that your parents were listening to the album too. So it was kind of, that was definitely it for me. Billy Connolly, but also, the American stand-ups as well, Richard Pryor and Eddie Murphy and Steve Martin and the older ones, Bob Newhart. It kind of like, the idea of one person on stage, Joan Rivers as well, who is a fantastic comedian, maybe the best I've ever seen.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and rest in peace, Joan Rivers. Wow, yeah, that's great to hear. I love hearing your inspirations. All right, and then a lot of our listeners remember obviously from the Late Late Show, which from 2005 to 2014. But remind us even before then, like how did you, I guess, pivot from stand up to? And I guess you were on like the Drew Carey Show and somewhat, TV sitcom work too. But remind us sort of some of the greatest Craig Ferguson hits before you actually got the Late Late Show.
Well, I don't know if there were of great very. I don't
Well,
know if
I'm
that's
saying
a.
they are. Damn it.
I don't know if that's a thing. I mean, I think that I did the Drew Carey show, and I did it for like that show was on for like 10 years or something. It was a long time we did it, and I was working on that and doing independent movies at the time, and I wasn't really doing any stand up really then.
Right.
I only started back doing stand up when I started back in late night in 2005. When I started doing the late night show, I thought, if you look at the very early editions of that show, the monologue was very weak. It was like, oh my god, it was bad, and I took a lot of flack for it being rubbish. And so I thought, what I better do is I better go out and work. I better get my chops back doing stand up. So that's when I started doing stand up again and started going back to the clubs and doing it. And it was a great way to kind of exercise to get the monologue into place. And also I discovered that I loved it again. I mean, it was the first thing that I did really that I felt like I kind of, I knew what I was doing. Because when I started out, in performance, I was a drummer in punk rock bands. And punk rock at the time was everything. It wasn't just bands, it was like performances and like it was a whole scene. So I ended up doing stand up, in punk rock clubs in Glasgow in the 1980s, which is a way to toughen yourself up for a rowdy crowd.
Oh, absolutely. Well, that's good. Our listeners will get a kick out of knowing that you were doing some in punk band stuff and that you really didn't even get into stand up until around the time of the Late Late Show. That's cool tidbits. Thanks for that. And I'm sure you have fond memories of that show. It had a long run, almost, what, 2005 to 2014, almost a decade. What was it like when you first got, they told you you'd be replacing Craig Kilborn? I guess you and Jon Stewart have that in common, right? He replaced Kilborn on the Daily Show. But yeah,
That's right.
what was it like? Taking over for Craig and knowing you're going to be following David Letterman every night. I mean, that's like all time like dream of a lifetime stuff.
Yeah, it was an interesting time. It was. I mean, I'm really glad I did it. It was very exciting to start out doing it. But I also felt, at the time, I'm probably going to last a couple of months in this job before they realized they made a terrible mistake, and it took I just kind of like it's such a machine doing late night. It kind of sucks you in, and you end up. It's just like every day, every day, every day you have to do the show, and it kind of. I'm glad I did it. I'm really glad I did it, and I'm very proud of the shows that we did. But I'm glad I don't do it anymore as well. It's a lot. It kind of takes over your life, and the amount of time I did it, I was happy about it. But I'm glad not to be doing it anymore.
So you loved so many aspects of it, and it was great for your career and celebrity, obviously. But it was a bit of a grind, you say, to do it every day, night in, night
Well,
out.
when I was a kid in punk rock bands, I used to always say, "You'll never get me wearing a suit and sitting behind a desk." And then, lo and behold, they did get me wearing a suit and sitting behind a desk, and I did it for 10 years, and that's enough.
Yeah, but you know what? Sitting in a suit behind a desk on a late night show it's a little more punk rock than just at an office cubicle. So you're all right. You know what I mean?
Thanks for saying that, man. I
you were
really
great at it.
appreciate it.
You were great
That
at it.
helps with my self-esteem. Thank you.
That's why we had you call in. We were like, he probably needs a self-esteem boost.
I do. I do need a self-esteem boost. That's why, performers are needy people. That's why I go on stage all the time. I need some sort of validation. That's also why you should never ask performers questions they're not qualified to answer, because they're so needy they'll answer them anyway, and then everyone makes a fool of themselves.
Absolutely. Well, of course I'm joking. You're the star here. Our listeners are listening to you for a bit of a pick me up, so their own self-esteem boost. So you know what I mean? You're the one leading the show here. But hey, I do want to know, I mean, you said it was a bit of a grind, but did you have any, I don't know, favorite bits or recurring sketches or kind of stuff that you said the monologue was hard for you at first, but I don't know, what were your favorite bits that you would do on the Late Late Show?
Well, it's hard to say. There's like 2,000 plus hours of that show. I mean,
Yeah.
it's hard to kind of single it out. The guests, I guess, is some of the things that I remember about. Doing the episode that won the Peabody Award, the Archbishop Desmond Tutu, when he came on and we did a whole episode about South Africa.
Yeah.
That was that was a real high point. That's something you don't expect to end up doing. And you know, there are a few bits and pieces, but I think if I had to pick one, it would probably be that. Actually, it would probably be the Archbishop Desmond Tutu thing.
Absolutely. That's good to know. And aside from that's like your proudest moment, was there any guest? And by the way, I hate it's so hard when people even ask me this too. Like, who's your favorite interview? Because like you're saying, you do it every day, and so you're like, they all run together. But were there anywhere you were like, childhood Craig Ferguson? I can't believe I'm interviewing this person right now. Probably a lot, but were there any one or two that really come to mind?
Yeah, well, I guess the ones that you end up being friendly with are the maddest ones, like the most kind of memorable things, like Robin Williams, who I idolized when I was younger, and Robin came on, and we became friendly after he was on the show, and he was on the show a lot, and that was fantastic. And also Billy Connolly, I mentioned before, and
Yeah.
Betty White, who became like a regular, like every couple of weeks on the show, who was fantastic and just wonderful. And so these icons that you grow up with that turn into human beings as they sit across from you, it's kind of it's a fabulous thing. It also kind of demystifies the whole idea of celebrity and stardom and stuff like that, which I think is healthy. I think that I certainly think we could use a little more demystification of that kind of thing.
Oh, I agree. Well, that's what we're doing right now. We're demystifying you.
Yeah,
Hey,
I don't think there's a lot of mystery about me, but thanks for saying so.
I'm curious about, I mean, we mentioned all the people that you demystified, and rest in peace, Betty White and Robin Williams. And man, just legends. But I'm curious about your interview style with them. Like I've asked several people. I asked Dick Cavett about it, and he said he went from over preparing to later in his life being more of a, spontaneous in the moment. I interviewed Jay Leno. He said that he would like to go in the dressing room ahead of time and sort of give people a heads up, like, hey, Hugh Grant, I have to ask you about this, just so you're not blindsided. Larry King never prepared a damn question. Letterman had his own style. But what about for you? Like, did you have, were you more of one or the other of the sort of the strategies I mentioned?
I think that what I did is like you mentioned what Dick Cavett did there, and I think that's probably the trajectory that I followed. At first, I kind of over prepared, and then I realized that was a way not to have a conversation with someone.
Right.
That if I had prepared a conversation, then I had, I had an agenda of where I wanted it to go, and that's not that. Look, if you're interviewing someone about politics or about a particular topic, that makes perfect sense. But if you're just talking to someone on a late night show, that doesn't make any sense at all, not to me anyway. So I ended up not preparing at all, right up to the point like when it was a movie star on and they say, well, you have to watch the movie first, I would say, nah, I'm not going to watch the movie, because if I watch the movie or I read the book or I hear the album, then I'm not going to know. I mean, I'm going to be in the know about it, and I want to be someone that doesn't know about it, so that they're talking to someone who doesn't know anything about what they've just done. And some people thought that was a lazy way of doing it, but I genuinely, that was the philosophy. As I should be talking to you about it the way everybody else is going to hear it, which is, we don't know anything about it yet. I haven't seen the movie, neither has anyone else.
Right.
Um,
Like the
and I
audience
think that
perspective. Yeah.
right, exactly. And I think that the benefit I had in late night as well is that I hadn't been trained. I hadn't been trained in media or journalism or anything, and I think that kind of worked in the environment I was in. I'm not a journalist. I'm not good at it. I don't have any training in it. So I wasn't trying to be a journalist. I was just, being someone who was talking to someone else. That was it.
Right. No, I think it worked out for you. And yeah, I think it's sort of like a happy medium. At least my theory is like, it's sort of nice to have a couple, maybe bullet points in your head of things, maybe a basic blueprint of maybe things you want to talk about, but you can't be so beholden to that. You have to kind of just let it free flow. And if Craig Ferguson says something hilarious about his Jack Russell, we got to go off on a tangent on that. You know what I mean? Like, you just have to be improvisational within your blueprint, I guess.
I think that's right. I think if you're having a conversation with someone, it's probably a good idea to listen to what they're saying. I think and I think if you over prepare, then the danger is you're not listening to them. You're thinking about the next thing you're going to say. Which, to be fair, that's a lot of conversations in life anyway.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
but I don't want to do that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I've enjoyed sort of the free-flowing nature of this. Before we run, say some positive words about your Craig Kilborn, the guy you took over for, and maybe even what you thought the strengths of your successors were, James Corden, and excited for Taylor Tomlinson's taking over, I guess, the slot in 2024, early next year. Do you have any, if you can compare sort of the strengths? I won't make you do weaknesses, but yeah, the strengths of the guy who preceded you and the people that are following you.
I don't think it's seemly for me to comment on people that that are doing the job. I think that's kind of somebody else's job. I'm not a pundit. I know it's a hard job, and I know that it requires a lot of your time. And anyone who does it has my respect, because you can't phone it in. You gotta turn up and do it. So anyone who does it, I wish them well.
Way to diplomatically pivot out of it.
Yeah, what that's called is I'm not answering your question, but I'm not going to be rude enough to say I'm not answering your question.
And I wasn't rude enough to say you must answer it. So I'm glad we're both dancing around this.
You're not a cop, so I don't have to answer your question.
I love it. I love it. I love it. No, it's interesting. Hey, here in DC, we're having a hard time with the peaceful transfer of power. So I was curious your thoughts on peacefully transferring the power of late night hosting, but that's okay. Hey, real quick, final seconds. We have to cover your post late show era. You won 2 daytime Emmys, I believe, hosting Celebrity Name Game for at least 3 or 4 years, I think, 2014, 2017. How fun was it going into sort of the game show hosting realm?
I love doing that. I love doing game shows because I'm also not trained in that either. So all I have to do is turn up and play the game. I don't know who's going to win, and I kind of like that. It's a kind of free. It's really fun, actually. It's a really fun thing to do. I really enjoy it, and it requires not a great deal from the audience, and really, in a way, if you enjoy yourself and just like run the game, it doesn't require a lot from me either. All I have to do is enjoy myself and play the game, and I love doing that. I found it a joy. I'll do it. I'll do that again. I really like that.
What would be your idea? Speaking of just letting the conversation go wherever, I have now questions I had totally not prepared. What would be your ideal game show, like dream gig? I know Drew Carey, your old pal from the show, has got Prices Right on lockdown, but what would be the game show that you always loved that you'd love to host?
I don't know. I like the ones where you talk to the contestants a lot. Jay's doing You Bet Your Life, and I think that's a great format for a show. There's a bunch of old formats that I think are good, but I think game shows. I did one for a while on ABC called The Hustler, which was a fun one to do as well. We did that for a few seasons, which was a real kind of that contestant participation type of a show, and I enjoy that. That's kind of cool.
Gotcha. And sort of final seconds, scripted series, either TV shows or movies. I'm just spitballing now. I would love to hear what cracks Craig Ferguson up. Like, do you have all-time favorite comedy movies? Mel Brooks, whatever. I don't know. Like, what's your like all-time, like, I can always return to this comedy classic movie and it gets me in stitches every time?
Talladega Nights, the Legend of Ricky Bobby, perhaps the greatest movie ever made.
Help me, Jesus. Help me, Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so great. All right, we'll leave it there. Hey, thanks so much for joining us, Craig Ferguson. Again, everyone, check him out this Saturday at Hollywood Casino at Charlestown Races in West Virginia. Fancy Rascal Tour. No dog, but you will be the Fancy Rascal yourself.
I'll be there.
All right. Hey, thank you so much for doing this. I had fun.
Thanks, man. Thanks for talking to me.
See ya.
See ya. Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Our theme music is Scott Buckley's Clarion. Remember to give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time.